the courage to turn down the offer came from a lot of pain and discomfort, which is usually how I tend to make big decisions in my life.
What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast where I highlight amazing agency owner stories so you can feel like you're not alone and you have support. And actually, on today's episode, we're going to talk about getting support in your business so you can actually grow your agency. And I'm really proud of what she's done within her agency. So let's go ahead and jump into the show. All right, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Avril Tomlin-Hood, and I am the CEO and founder of BOA. We are a digital marketing agency. We specialize in media buying based in Vancouver, BC, and we specialize in working exclusively with plant-based and sustainable brands.
I love it. And you have a plant right behind you.
I do. I have many. Yeah.
And one to the right too. But
Yeah.
well, tell us, how did you get started? Why did you start your agency?
Oh man. So I am absolutely what you would call an accidental agency owner. I started working for a woman about 10 years ago who had a little media buying shop. Uh, Long story short, worked with her for about 4 years. She was ready to go on and do something else. So I took over. So I bought the agency from her. It was a bit of an earn out on her part. And since then, that was about, I think I said 6 years ago. So it's been through a few iterations since then. And some of the years we've done more white labeling than branded agency work. Some years it's been the other way around. But essentially, the long and winding path that led me to where I am today was about a year and a half ago, we officially rebranded the agency to BOA. So we decided to kind of focus less on the white labeling, which was our bread and butter for a long time. Still have that side of the business active, but realized that to be the captain of my own ship, we needed to invest in the agency brand itself, and had a potential acquisition of my team that didn't go through. Thank goodness. At the end of the day, that was not going to be the right fit for me, and so that was the catalyst to decide, hey, I want to be in control here. I want to build what I want to build, and I want to be able to focus all of my energies into this. And so BOA was born, and that decision to niche down and work exclusively with companies that I believe in and I believe can make a difference was really important to me. So it's exciting, but a lot of change in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And it's really kind of lonely for a lot of years. And it seems like you went through that as well. What gave you kind of the courage to kind of say, well, the first question is what gave you the courage to turn down an offer to sell? And what gave you the courage to rebrand a brand that people knew that you actually bought from someone else, right? Like, let's start there.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to that. So the courage to turn down the offer came from a lot of pain and discomfort, which is usually how I tend to make big decisions in my life. I think a lot of us do, right? Get put into a corner a little bit. And I just realized after a year of negotiations that were not going the way I wanted them to go, that this offer was never going to be what I wanted it to be. I was never going to have the agency, no pun intended, I mean independence by that, to do what I wanted to do within that structure and within that agreement. And just sort of had a come to Jesus moment where I realized one day, like on the phone to my coach, this isn't going to work. I got to step away and I got to do something else that's directed by me. So pain is the answer to the first question. And the second, the courage to sort of rebrand what already existed. There was no other way. I realized it had been that brand, as it was, had sort of been left to I don't say die, but we hadn't invested in it over the years. It had just sort of been there, um, and energies had gone elsewhere into the white labeling side of things, or in my personal life, I had a kid too, so about 4 years ago, and that just sort of I wasn't prioritizing any big projects. I was just sort of surviving and working with no mat leave and a skeleton team and all that. So the timing was just right, and it was never mine. Like I bought it from her. I've owned the agency for more years than I worked at it, but it never felt like mine. You know what I mean? And I think in order to put the energy necessary to scale and grow something, I had to really reinvent what that looked like for me.
That's great. I mean, a lot of people kind of hold on to it until they're going down in flames, and then there's really no other option. So,
Yeah.
good job on that, and kind of trusting your gut is always a good decision. We talk about that in the mastery all the time. Of like, people are like, "Well, what do you think we need to do here, or do I need to do this?" And we're like, "Well," and they're like, "My gut's kind of telling me this." I'm like, "Well, why are you asking us to change
Yeah.
your mind?" Like, go do it.
Yeah. And I think, back to that first question, I say pain, but it was also like my gut knew that whole time, but my head was looking at dollar signs, to be honest. And my head was looking at potential future and what I thought might be an easier way than having to, start from not scratch necessarily, but from a branding perspective. Yeah. So my gut always knows. That's a good point. And I know whenever I go against it, whenever I think about finances more than my gut, whenever I think about, you know, the worst case scenario, whenever I'm in fear, as opposed to, like the faith that something will go the way I want it to go or should go, then yeah, it never goes right.
Yeah. Let's talk about kind of as you're building and you're rebranding, you turn down the offer and you've been growing pretty substantial and investing a lot in the agency right now. What kind of support really helped you along the way? Because, like I said in the very beginning, a lot of us feel like we're alone. We're making
Mhm.
decisions on an island. Our team is coming to us for every decision. So, like, what are some of the things that helped you?
Yeah, so the first thing I actually did was, as mentioned, speaking to my coach earlier, I got a coach recommended through a friend, and that was sort of the beginning of changing the game for me, is getting really strategic with someone outside of myself and laying it all out and figuring out what kind of support I would need from her in this case, what goals I had. It was that was fundamental. I joined your mastermind, so that was actually huge for me in terms of combating that feeling of aloneness. And I know that in my other life outside of work, like community, it combats so much when it comes to feeling lonely and getting stuck or feeling apathetic, like all those things that we struggle with as entrepreneurs. I mean, I still do, but definitely having that community, that support, it also helps me kind of see down the road, right? That's a major thing as well. Seeing people who are in my position, but maybe 2 years ahead, or 3 years ahead, or 5 years ahead. Um, this one is huge. I got a bookkeeper, so for 5 years, I was very poorly doing my own books. like,
You're the
like I
worst
was.
bookkeeper in the world.
Oh, yes, we probably would be tied for that title. I had like these old Excel sheets that, it worked for a little while. It worked when it was me and three clients, right? And when I was essentially a contractor, I would call that, but it did not work anymore, and things were getting messy. And so I hired a bookkeeper. Those are sort of the three main things that come to mind when it
What
comes
about
to
with your team?
support.
How have you grown your team?
Hmm. Yeah, so I have been really, really lucky to find such great people, and I know how hard it is to find great people. I also know how important it is to retain them once you have them. And I'm learning about that kind of every day. I think that's right now. I said to someone on my team the other day, I feel like right now my job at this stage of the agency is a combination of HR and recording podcasts, because we also launched a podcast recently. How did this happen? This was not my job 2 years ago or a year ago, HR and podcast production. But I have a sort of right hand person who has been gradually moving into an operations role over the last couple of years, as we've hired people underneath her to do the executionary work. And that has changed the game, right? In terms of SOPs, she's very complimentary to me. If you're going to use, what is it, visionary versus integrator, she is the integrator. So I have that person working very closely with me. She's very invested in the company. I've been the way that I'm envisioning how I'm growing my team right now. We had a meeting about this yesterday, so everybody's on the same page and they know where we're going and they know what my vision is I'm building a leadership team. We don't have a lot of people underneath them or working with them to support them yet, but they will, right? So that's the goal. So everyone I hire right now is I have to see a potential leader in them and someone who could eventually own a whole department, so to speak. So in broad strokes, that's sort of how I'm looking at my team and hiring right now.
Yeah. Well, the couple things that you said, right, of like HR, it's more around managing people and like
Mm-hmm.
and putting the right people. Like you remember like the story I would always tell around Zach. Like all he wanted to do, like when he was at a point where he was literally at a point where he was going to get a loan from his parents to make payroll, and he wanted to shut down the business. Like that's how low at a point he got. And I asked him, I said, what do you want to do every day? And he was like, I just want to grow my people and grow my clients. That's it. Right. And you're doing both of those. And that's why you guys are growing, is you're growing your people and you're going to grow your audience from the podcast. I'm so glad. Like
Yeah.
I always, I think we have a drinking game in the mastermind when I always recommend a podcast to someone. I was like, it's just so easy. Like if you guys do not have a podcast, like go do it. Like, is it very hard to do?
It's not, it was hard to get my head around to begin with, because first of all, I didn't know what we would talk about. I didn't want to have another podcast about marketing, because those are a dime a dozen. Um, and there are people that are much smarter than me that could talk about that for an hour, and I'd rather listen to them, right? Um, I didn't like the idea of promoting myself, which is something I've struggled with since you've known me in the mastermind. I would much rather brand the agency than brand myself. But what I realize is they are one and the same, and we can differentiate in a strategic way. But I have to brand myself, and so I kind of got over that and got used to that idea. And it's not hard doing it, because what it is just conversations with really interesting people that I like talking to. And it's such an easy ask. I mean, if I email 20 people asking them to be on our new podcast about innovative, sustainable brands and the leaders behind them, 18 of them are going to respond and say, sure, tell me more. And I'm going to get in front of these directors of marketing, their CEOs or founders, and we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to create rapport, and then I'm going to post on LinkedIn, and then we're going to be connected, and that strategic business development angle is smart, and that's been really easy. But if I emailed 20 of them saying, hey, we have this great offer to work with our agency, can we do your PPC and your paid social, I would get a response from zero. So
Oh.
yeah.
I want to touch a little bit on, and you kind of hinted to this. I want to make sure people don't skip over it. On the podcast, you don't talk about marketing. You talk about
Mhm.
their business and what interests them. So what are some of the questions, or how did you come up with that? Because I think that's really clever, because a lot of people think we just need to talk about marketing of what they actually do. I'm like, no, 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 no. You just need to get their attention, talk about something interesting that way.
Yeah, I think if you want to, think about your audience, who's your audience? Like if you want to talk about marketing in great detail, then you're talking to other marketers, and we're not necessarily looking to attract other marketers who have the same technical understanding as we do of the marketing work that we do. We're looking to talk to owners and founders and CEOs, and in some cases directors of marketing. Yes, but they're CMOs, right? So they're it's not the same, because what we do is digital media buying, and it's quite technical and quite specific, and they're not as concerned with that, right? So we just, firstly, I would say we have conversations that I want to have. So it makes it organic and natural, and I think that makes it easier and better to listen to. Um, so we just thought of reaching out to companies that we admire and have stories that are interesting. So I always like to hear an origin story, because I love origin stories, like how you came to be, what your challenges have been, and then um, how you're changing the landscape in the space, because the industries that we work in, mainly plant-based food and sustainable fashion, I believe have the power to change the world, right? In terms of voting with your dollar and making more sustainable choices. And people want to hear those stories. It's top of mind, I think, for lots of people, not just the people who own and run these companies, but consumers. So I think it has a broad appeal, but it's also a fairly niche topic of or area of conversation.
Yeah. Last question I want to ask you. You've been investing a lot into your agency, and a lot of times that can get pretty stressful to see all this money, you know, going one way. How did you make that decision? How do you keep uh, your mind going in the right direction? Going, no, no, don't pull back, because I know a lot of people are going through that right now.
Yeah, man, money going one way is really scary. Especially because for so long I was really good with keeping the margins where I wanted them to be. But I was keeping the growth where it was too. So I understand that. I'm conceptually, I understand the level of investment it takes to grow, and it's almost like we've had to create. We've created ourselves as a client account. So BOA is a client. And when we have our client review meetings, we go through BOA every week, right? When we look at investment and growth strategy and media planning and marketing planning, we include BOA in that. So um, I had to get a support. I think support, that sort of circles back to the support thing in terms of not pulling the chute when I start doing my monthly financial analysis or projections, and I start to feel that like choking feeling, like, oh my god, um, what are we doing? um, I have support. I have people who believe in the company. I have people who are on the team who are along for the ride, who know where we're going, and that's important too. And it's something that you say as well. It's making sure everybody's knows where the ship is going. And I think when team members are aware of that, then there's this feeling of like camaraderie and support, and support really. Um, Planning, I think, is important. Is working back what revenues are actually needed to reach the goals, so it's all very clear, like measuring what matters. So we can have goals, but what are the key um, performance indicators attached to them, so we know that we're reaching them? So I don't necessarily have a KPI. All the KPIs are not like 7 new clients this quarter, but they're X amount of new podcasts in the bank, or conference contacts, or whatever it is. It's just measuring, and so
Yeah,
reaching the goals doesn't feel as elusive, right?
yeah. I always had to remind myself, if I felt comfortable, I wasn't pushing hard enough. So I had to
Yeah,
feel uncomfortable, and I knew I was pushing just the right amount. But the thing that gives you sanity, or gave me sanity, was having a plan. If I had a
yeah,
plan, like if you're pushing hard and you have no plan or destination, well, that's just craziness. And you
Mhm.
can ultimately wind up in kind of getting a good paid lesson, which is, I look at as that builds character. And then the
Yeah.
successes you have over time actually give you confidence. So either way, you're going to build character or confidence, and you
Yep.
should be building both. At the same time, a lot of times I'm like, oh, yeah, that was a kind of a success and a lesson of not to do again.
Yeah. Oh, I need those. I need both of those, right? I think I
Mhm.
need, like I said, I grow through pain like a lot of us, and I need those lessons because they give me motivation. And then I get up and I go, okay, I'm resilient. I'm going to get a little muddy, but now I know. Like we had a hiring let's say mistake or a miscalculation where I didn't trust my gut recently, and it caused a bit of a mess and it was uncomfortable. But I was very quickly able to kind of turn it around and go, okay, lesson learned. Building team. This is important. The universe knows I need this. Let's go carry on. Um, because yeah, I need both of those to motivate me at all times.
Awesome. Well, what's the website people go check you out, and what's the podcast name where people can listen in?
Sure, yeah, you can go to weareboa.com and the podcast is called In with the New.
Ooh, I like that name. That's good.
Yeah,
In with
went
the
with the
new.
old.
There we go. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, share it out with another agency owner or someone that you know could actually benefit from this story. And if you guys want to be around amazing agency owners where we can help you scale and grow, share stories, see the things that you might not be able to see so you can avoid some of the lessons you don't need to go through and really get the support you need, go to agencymastery360.com. And until next time, have a swank day.